Hello and welcome to Transform Talk 4. My name's John Comber and I'm an iESE associate, and I'm here with Paul Cooper, Head of Homelessness, London Borough of Newham.
Managing Director.
Oh, Managing Director.
London Network for Pest Solutions.
London Network for Pest Solutions. Paul, my apologies. And hopefully Lisa Nixon, Digital Services Design Officer, Cumbria County Council, will be joining us. And we're here to discuss customer focus and congruence. We all know customer focus has become essential to all local authorities going forward, not only in working more closely in a customer-centric way with the customer, but also developing the role of the customer in the design of future service delivery. So making them more a partner in local government than a resident. And this is an important facet which is helping throughout local government develop a holistic approach to customer focus. What we're going to be doing today is asking Paul to outline the projects that he's been involved in and the journey he's been on, and hopefully if Lisa is able to join us to do the same, and then we'll have a discussion about how that customer focus has worked in improving the service delivery. You might ask why we have included the word congruence. Congruence is there because increasingly people realise that aligning mission, vision, strategies, objectives, not only in the council as an organisation, but with the community at large and all of the other institutions and partners and supply chain organisations, is key to delivering the maximum benefit to the local authority and its administrative area. So we'll get on to talk about that, but right away, Paul, tell us about your project, tell us about what you've been doing and the scope and impact it's had.
Yeah, sure. So some years ago, through austerity, government austerity measures, local authorities were suffering quite a lot with finances. And the London Borough of Newham looked at some of their services and realised that they weren't necessarily statutory, but they still needed to be provided. We saw some local authorities going down the route of externalising their pest control, and many others just making cuts to their pest control teams. And that they were cuts that started off possibly working, but then eventually not being sustainable, really. So I was approached and I coined a phrase that said, yes, we can do the same old things, but not in the same old way. And that was, I think some people in the housing department disliked me at that, especially the heads of service did, especially because because the director did like hearing that. So what we did was we set up a externalised company, a LATGO, local authority trading company. We called it the London Network for Pest Solutions. We called it London Network because we hoped to broaden it out at some stage and take on board other councils. We set up this with the sole purpose of keeping the pest control still localised. Most of 50% of our staff live within Newham as well. Keeping it localised and able to carry on operating as a pest control team, doing the housing services pest control work to their housing stock, and at the same time, because we were a trading company, a proper limited company, we're London Network for Pest Solutions Limited. Because we are a limited company, we're able to trade outside, and we've done that very, very successfully actually over the years. We've been trading now for 5 or 6 years, and our turnover is about 1.3 million, and the total council contracts come to about 300,000. So it's been quite a success, really. Yeah.
Tell me about the sort of services you deliver, the types of people you employ, what sort of facilities you use.
So it's just pest control. Well, it was just pest control until the pandemic came in, when we diversified and started offering a sanitisation service. It's mostly pest control officers that we employ, and we actually specialise in. We're not a competitor really to the commercial sector. You've heard of companies like Ecolab or Rentokil. We don't compete against them. We've got no chance against them, actually. They're international. but we specialise in domestic, and that's been a passion of mine since I started in pest control in 1986. It's always been a passion of mine to improve people's lives in their homes and their houses. And actually, given the story that's in the news today about the poor young boy that died as a result of the mould, actually, way back in 1986, I'd made a decision that when I was going into people's houses, this is just as an old pest control officer, they had, at those days, they had German cockroaches everywhere and mould and vandalism. And I knew I couldn't do anything about the mould and the vandalism, but I thought I'd try and do something about pest control. I moved to Lambeth Council, and at the end of about 10 years, we'd reduced all infestations across their whole of their housing stock to less than 3%. So if with determination and passion, it is possible to do that. And of course, if you're reducing it to 3%, you're improving the lives of residents and customers. And that's I've never taken my eye off the ball there. It's always been about improving their lives, whether it's council housing stock or private and domestic where people are paying for it as well. So I looked at, taken on board some of the private sector's terrible methods of working, and what we introduced were things like unlimited visits. So we do charge for pest control. We have to, obviously, that's how we make our income. But instead of saying, oh, you only get 3 visits and then you have to pay again, we give unlimited. So that for boroughs, especially inner city boroughs, where there's a lot of where housing stock sits next door to mansions worth millions and millions of pounds, those people know that once they paid that money to London Network for Pest Solutions, they're going to get rid of their pests. They're not going to be asked to pay more money. So that's.
So tell me about the process for setting up the company. How did it come about? A number of delegates watching will be thinking, why set up a company? How do you go about setting up a company? How does that become a trading company that then can be successfully run?
It was incredibly hard, and it took an incredibly long time. Obviously, for local authorities, they tend to. It's very difficult to get an actual decision maker. Everything's done by committee quite often. So we had a panel set up to help us go through this process. There were more people on the panel than we actually had staff that were going to be externalised to do the job. That panel didn't just oversee pest control. There were 9 other LATCOs at the time that were going to be externalising. So, it wasn't a crazy thing. But of course, you had involvement from human resources and procurement, IT, legal services, health and safety. And part of the most important, there were different gateways that we had to go through. And to achieve the gateways, we had to have business plans developed to certain levels. Because there were so many people with so many different inputs, we ended up with over 40 different versions of a business plan.
Right.
When we finally externalised, we didn't look at that business plan at all. That being said, today, I wouldn't operate for 1 second without the business plan. It's absolutely a Bible to us. It's the most important thing. It absolutely sets our direction. The process was very, very long. There's all sorts of things that you don't realise as when you're going to externalise. So even most councils tend to self-insure their vehicles. No, they don't have insurance companies. When we externalised, we couldn't use the council's self-insurance process. Right. We had to go and get some. What we did have at that point was a lot of car insurance companies running a mile from us because we'd had claims against us, but we had no claims discount built up.
Right.
So it was very hard to get vehicle insurance. We had to go out and find a separate payroll provider, separate legal things. And at the same time, from the day one of ending with the council to day one, or the last day of ending with the council to the first day of starting as a company, we still had residents that had appointments booked that still wanted to be seen. So it was a pretty full-on time. I would say today, with our business model and the way that it operates, I could probably, with a willing council, I could take them from a pest control company to externalised in probably 90 days now. But if you haven't got that experience, it's never going to, it's going to take 3 years.
And has the way the residents view you changed? Have you still got their trust? Are you still seen as part of a council, or have you become your own brand and now you promote your own customer?
That's a good question, actually, a very good question, because many local authorities, their name is quite toxic amongst residents, but actually those same residents really appreciate the protectiveness of the local authority. So, every year they'll get a parking ticket, or they'll have to pay their council tax. They don't think it's value for money, but as soon as you say that you're the pest control company wholly owned by the council, there's that level of trust that they have within you. It's quite interesting. So what we do is we have a lot of customer focus. We do an annual survey of our customers. The first thing we did when we externalised was a roadmap where we explored and identified every single touch point for our customers. As the boss, you think you know everything. Actually, you know very little. You don't know what the conversation is that the people on the telephone have with the residents unless you really sit down and talk to them about it. I guessed our busiest time would always be Monday mornings on the telephones. Nope, Wednesday afternoons. But unless you have, you plot that out as a roadmap, you look at all the touch points and then you see where you can improve. And we were able to, through customer surveys, we realised there was something a little bit lacking in that initial contact with the residents. So we're able to change the way that we talk to the residents on the telephone, improve their journey, improve their service. It's now our ratings across the whole of everything runs at about 97. It runs at 97% customer satisfaction.
That's a fantastic achievement. We've now got Lisa Nixon, Digital Services Design Officer, Cumbria County Council, who successfully joined us. Lisa, welcome.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm going to ask you to outline the project you've been involved in, and just tell us about the scope of it, how it began, how it's progressed, and then we'll go on to a general conversation, if we might. So over to you.
Okay.
Let us know about your project.
Yeah, I came in, I'm actually the newest member of the Cumbria digital team. I came in just over a year ago, and we started talks with the children and family children's services. They wanted to open a registration window for parents with children with their special educational needs, for them to access targeted short breaks. Initially, it was just a registration window where they could put in elements of how the kind of needs their child has, where they live, so we could assess eligibility. Only certain people need to have certain criteria to be able to access the service. So we were brought in from a digital point of view to find a solution of a form to complete and get that information from the parents, and then we could go from there. So that was the initial scope. We do iterate as a team. We always kind of get involved in initial talks with people, with services. It might not take us anywhere, but we always like to get involved initially and see where it goes. So that was the initial ask about the form, to get people on board. And then it turned into the parents being able to book on those activities.
Okay.
I don't know whether this is the case with other authorities, but there's a problem with plumbing in Cumbria County Council systems, as in they struggle to talk to one another. So the system that they used in children's services, whereby they wanted to book children onto these activities, the system wouldn't allow it. So we looked at developing that in Liberty Create, which is our system that we use, our solution. And we've successfully implemented that. So the parents, from a customer's point of view, the parents book the child on, then we look at their criteria, see if they match the criteria so they can get onto the service. And then from there on in, they get a booking link and they can go onto the booking system and look for opportunities for their children that'll be suitable, and join the activity. And it's worked really well. It's been, there's other areas where we can take that part of that project so far, but we don't actually book the child on. The parent has a balance, the parent gets reminders, the parent can access child and family workers if they're having a problem with it digitally, because we know that not everybody is digitally minded, so we've got a solution to help them, to support them with that. And yeah, we're on year 2 now. Every year they have to, as part of the local offer, every year they have to reapply because the circumstances might have changed. They have to reapply, and it's working really well. The satisfaction, we have a internal, how do you find this service, so that people can come back to us and tell us how satisfied they are with it. And so far the feedback's good. Well, it's good enough that we've got to year 2 anyway. And
what are the arrangements you've put in place for those who don't have digital access?
So in the comms, as well as having the digital solution, in the comms that we put out on the send offer, there's a web page so that people can go on and read that. And there's also a phone number to the child and family workers that support the service, and they can actually go on and complete the form for them or look for opportunities for them, so that it isn't just all about the digital solution.
And what sort of percentage would it be that have to resort to phone or having an advocate fill out a form?
I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure. I think a lot of it is quite intangible, because we get a lot of calls to the child and family workers about problems with the link, but there's so many variables there that it's hard to troubleshoot where that lies. So whether that lies with their internet connection, whether that lies with their broadband supplier, how they're using their mobile data. There's so many things. The feedback that we get is along the lines, we always ask for feedback. I think it's really important to listen to feedback when you implement anything like this. Feedback that we get along the lines of, there's a lot of information there on the screen that they can't read. We can't view the activities, we can't view the opportunities. We're not able to filter how we would like to. We do take on board all those issues, and we improve the service as best we can. But with regard to statistics, I'm not sure what the percentages go to them rather than come to us. We've never really explored that side of things.
We have a delegate question for you. Have you created a shared vision with your local community?
Shared vision?
So a vision for the service. So are you working with the local community to develop a vision for the service so that they're helping co-create the service, working with you?
We have one of our, there's a few stakeholders involved in the project. One of them is comms, works in comms. She was actually a special educational needs parent, a child who is part of that cohort of people. So she was really useful to be part of that internal conversation, if you like. But I know that the service, the child and family workers in the service, have weekly meetings with the group to get that feedback with the parents. I'm not sure if it's weekly, it could be monthly, but we do have regular contact with the parents.
Okay, thank you. Paul, I'm going to ask you, does the success you're having trading with residents, is that reflected back to the council? Is your success seen as part of the council's success? Is that the way it works, or is it the success of you as a private company?
Over the years, I've worked with many housing associations and other local authorities, and part of my sales pitch has always been that if we do a good job, then you do a good job. We see so often that poor in teams like maintenance, for housing stock, where people wait ages for services, where it's poor quality, and that reflects poorly on the local authority. I think delivering a really good service actually reflects really well on the councils. That's via the customers. Before the council itself, since we've started trading, we're fortunate enough that we took some figures with us when we left, and over the past 6 years of trading, we've saved over £3 million.
Wow.
Because the council had to subsidise the pest control team before, so now we're fully funded. So we've saved them over £3 million, and because we're a company and they're the shareholder, there's a dividend payable as well, and the council has received over £300,000 in dividend payments as well. So it's seen, the council's seen positively, and it is positive for the council financially as well.
When you're on site, do your operatives have the opportunity to feed back things they see to the wider council? And if so, how does that work?
Yeah, they do. That's not necessarily something we shout about because we want to build up the trust with the customer, but staff are trained. Annually, we do a refresher course for all the staff on safeguarding issues and things like that. So they always have their eye out and they're looking for safeguarding issues. And we've been able to intervene on a few occasions, not personally intervene, but being able to direct people into the right services. One of the other companies that Newham owns is called the Language Shop. It's for translation services, and we've been able to push a lot of people forward to them as well. So yeah, we do interact and we do look for those problems. But there's also things like disrepair and housing issues and stuff like that. So we have a very good working process with Newham's. It's called RMS, Repairs and Maintenance Service, of where we feed back proofing problems that are causing rats and mice to enter buildings, and we're able to get that sorted out very quick for them.
Thank you. Lisa, how does your initiative fit into the wider council and play into other service areas? Is it part of a strategy for the council generally to improve its customer focus, get closer to the customer? So does it feed into, for example, housing?
I'm not sure it feeds into housing, but I know part of our strategic aim for the last few years, and it's always been something that our chief exec has spoke about, is putting the customer at the heart of all we do. And I think it's something that certainly our team, the digital team, are mindful of all the time in things that we develop. With regard to the short break system, we had an inspection, and it was one of the areas that we had to improve on. So this was part of that. This was the initiative as part of that. That kind of fell out of that inspection, if you like. The digital solution's working well. I think they need to realise that it needs to be supported. It could take, the whole service could have its own section that could run it, rather than being moulded into the Children's Services Directorate. It needs its own team, if you like, around it, and I think that's catching up. But yeah, that's how it came about. It came out of the inspection, and yeah, the vision of customer focus is something that I think we're probably more passionate about, and we're the people that bring that angle. I think when people come to us for solutions, that it's perhaps not a service area that they need help with, but why do they need it, and is that in the best interest of the customer? And that's always the angle that we bring to any conversation we have.
I see. We're running out of time, so I'm going to ask you both one question. If you were going about setting up that company again, what's the one thing you would do differently?
Oh gosh, I wouldn't let you ask that question. There's many things, but one of the things that wasn't good was the long drawn out process. It made it very difficult for the staff to know what their future was going to be. It just took far too long to do. So I would probably, if I was the council, any other councils there, I'd appoint a project manager to oversee the whole process and just really shorten the time and the number of people involved.
Thank you. Lisa, how about you? If you were starting again, what would you do differently? The one thing you'd do differently?
I think that's really interesting what you've just said there, because we're obviously an enabler of services, of things happening, and we're there to support and make sure things happen. But the problem with this is the same as that, what you've just mentioned there. There needs to be a project manager who oversees it from start to finish. This initiative, the Short Breaks Initiative, it's changed. The project manager's changed 3-4 times, and therefore it loses its momentum. I always think that if you have the right people in the right room, I think COVID demonstrated that, how quickly we got something off the ground, COVID response, how quickly you can achieve things if you have the right people in the right room. As soon as those people start to wander off, the momentum gets lost and the point gets lost and the objective gets lost. So I think if I had the power to change that, I would change that, but I don't.
Thank you. So can I thank Paul and Lisa for their contributions? Two very different services that are dealing with direct customer interface and improving the customer focus. Thank you very much for the time you've given to us. That ends this segment. The Future Best Practice Showcase is at 12:30. This session will act as a guide to success for councils, discussing what it takes for councils to be high performers in a post-European war, post-COVID, post-cost of living crisis environment. And we're here from a handful of top performing councils from the annual iESE Awards, sharing their best practice and lessons learnt from their achievements. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you. That's the end of this session.